Mother's Day. The celebration of Mother's Day, which only occurs in some countries, not worldwide. The celebration of Mother's Day. In our books, we have been showing, especially in Choices in Growth, Northern Paganism, Choices in Growth, we put in there the calendar of the year. The Northern Pagan year began in spring, vor, and it ran all the way through blood month, a harvest. So you have red month in spring to blood month in fall, autumn. That time, that season of growth, half the year, was called Mother's Time. The other half the year, from blood month back around through to red month, the start of the year, was called Father's Time, Odin's Time. So half the year, red month to blood month, that season of growth, the opening, April, to the maiden, May, to the young, June, to the midsummer milestone. The midsummer milestone seen in the Green Woman card. The milestone, the green leaf pole from old Scandinavian, represents when everything is at its fullest. And then you have the slow decline of Balder to harvest. That whole entire, it's not even a season, it's a half of a year crammed into a Mother's Day. A Mother's Day. This time of honoring and worshiping Mother Goddess, all of the goddess in the Vonir, wrapped up into one day. Now, what happened to women? Because Tacitus says that the Germanic people saw their women folk, the heathen, pagan, Northern Pagan Germanic people, saw their women folk endowed with something celestial, and they would always listen to what they had to say. What happened? What happened? Matriarchal societies, our women folk, not the mothers, Mother's Day, Mother's Time, the mothers, people who had, skin in the game. They had voting rights. They elected the rulers. They elected the leaders. And if those leaders turned out to be bad, they unelected the leaders. They were stripped of that by the cults of Abraham. They were also shield maidens. They were battle maidens. We had warrior queens that took over after their husbands were murdered. They were stripped of that. They were stripped of their voting rights. They were stripped of going into the military by the religious cults of Abraham. All of these things that they enjoyed, these freedoms that they enjoyed, they were stripped of. And they were given a day. Now, Tacitus says they were endowed with something celestial. Why? Because they were seen to give life, just like Mother Goddess, in that whole half of a year that she is honored by. The ability to create. Now, they were stripped of all of that, but something else was done. They were stripped of their professions. Remember, they were once the healers. They were once the doctors. They were in tune with nature. They knew what healed us. They could apply natural healing to our bodies of things that grew in the north. And what happened? Well, by Shakespeare, they were made to be ugly hags, and that's carried forth even into modernity with the Wiccan culture. They dress up as witches as handed to them by the religious cults of Abraham. They were portrayed. I mean, just look at the day that just passed, Walpurgisnacht. Walpurgisnacht is a one-day thing that happens in Mother's Time on April 30th, where they're told by Abraham to dress up as witches. And then that goes into the one-day celebration. See, I cannot force you to wake up and smell the coffee or even take a sip of it. The fact that you have northern people who call themselves northern ancestry people that call themselves pagan, Asatru, Odinist, whatever, that abide by this one day mentality shows that they are in a deep, deep, deep sleep. The Walpurgisnacht with the witches, the Halloween with the witches, one day events, Beltane with the May pole. What happens in May that there should be a honoring of a May pole? Absolutely nothing. That one day tick of a clock is nothing. The Twain month celebration of Milestone, the green leaf pole. The green leaf pole honors the pinnacle of Baldur's strength and the height of fertility of Mother's Time. And it is during that time that it is the mating season of our ancestral bear. And our cosmic bear is in its rocky rest bed on the northern horizon. The Thulian seat is what the Poetic Edda calls it, the heathen altar that Freya then gives her wake-up call to pregnant Brynhild from. Right during Milestone, when the green leaf pole is being celebrated. All rolled into Mother's Day. There's the coffee. Now, these hags that were created by Abraham, these are women folk that were made to be witches because they knew natural healing, and then they were put on mock trials, they were burned at the stake, they were drowned. The mother goddess was made to be the Baba Yaga. We've written about that in our Baba Yaga book. The rune Othala as well was shifted from a matriarchal rune to a patriarchal rune. And matriarchal societies, of which the Northern Pagan Vikings were the last vestige of Northern Paganism in the Old World, in Europe. So to focus on that last group that fought valiantly to stave off the depraved patriarchal system of Abraham that was trying to come in and force itself upon our culture and our ways and strip every amount of remembrance from our youth. Those Vikings that Viking age lasted about 273 years. Well, if you look back at how old we have the cave paintings, just to use that because it's one of the things that we put in our books, 32,000 years. You do the math on that. And neo-pagans who solely focus on that Viking age are focusing on 0.8% of their blood memory. 0.008 of their blood memory by focusing on just that one time frame. And they were the ones that fought to stave off the depravity of Abraham, that would strip our women of everything, that would destroy our culture and subjugate everyone to a begging, praying culture where someone else is looked to do for you, instead of what our matriarchal culture demanded was that you stood and did for yourself. You stood upon your own two legs and you did for yourself. Now that rune, Othala, that I just mentioned, we do have it. We put it in our book, Northern Pagan, and we correctly describe Northern Paganism, the runes, what Othala is. Othala, the rune Othala. Now you can see in that very rune that there is a sacred enclosure, that there is a vulva and 2 legs. Becomes very obvious. Matriarchal societies. Inheritance through the mother. As a matter of fact, on the top part of that book, Northern Paganism, the runes, Othala is the rune that represents the feminine, the sacred enclosure. The sacred enclosure, vulva, yew groves, tegabium, boreal forest. It represents inheritance from the matriarchal, ancestral property. It is another rune of Mother Goddess Free. The ichthus, Christian fish, is a modification of this rune. The tegabium, the boreal forest, the sacred enclosure that goes around the globe. This is called the middle fence, that sacred enclosure. The middle fence, Meath Garth, the middle fence, the sacred enclosure. The vulva of Mother Goddess. The womb. This is all the standing on your own 2 legs. It's all right there. But what Abraham did is they took this matriarchal culture that honored Mother Goddess, turned her into Baba Yaga, turned her into a nightmare, turned her into Lilith. They took all of this, a whole season, our women folk endowed with something celestial. Who were the doctors? Who were the voters who voted men in? Not all women, because maidens who did not have any skin in the game did not vote. Only mothers. And they took all of this and they rolled it into Mother's Day. One single day. So celebrate Mother's Day. Call your mom. Of course, I would look down upon you if you did not. However, on one single day, well, if you're going to do it on one single day, the tick of a clock, the turn of a calendar page, then you need to take 6 months, half the year, and roll all of that into one single day. And she better have one kick-ass day, one really good celebration. But that is Mother's Day, Mother's time, Mother's half the year is all rolled into one single day, the tick of a clock. And then even with all of that, and you look at how women were stripped of everything when Abraham took over, and how long it took to get pieces of it back. Women didn't lead. Women elected leaders. So in saying that women didn't lead, but they elected leaders, and they could unelect leaders if they did poorly, then they did. They weren't the figurehead that was there, the strong archetype that was there as a leader, but they had better lead in a way that promoted growth in a good way of life. And if you don't see this, well, take another sip of your coffee. Clear the cobwebs and try to wake up, because it's all right there. These one-day celebrations of milking you for money and baubles and sounds are Abraham. Northern paganism had seasons, and Mother's time rolled into Mother's Day is another example of how, one single day for a whole half a year. Tils nästa gång. Good health, sir.